Absolute value, part 2. So today we're going to see equations that have absolute values, but the absolute values are not all alone on one side. Let me show you what I mean. If I have something like this, the absolute value of x minus 3 plus 7 equals 11. Here's my absolute value. What is inside of the absolute value? X minus 3. I have something else on this side of the equation. I have a plus 7. So the first step in absolute value equations, you haven't seen this yet, but the first step is that we always have to make sure the absolute value is alone on one side of the equation. So in this case, what I would do is subtract 7 from both sides. That would give me, the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 11 minus 7 is 4. Now that I have the absolute value all alone over here, I can do what we've been doing. Take what's inside the absolute value, which is x minus 3, set it equal to 4, or that same thing equal to negative 4. And then I can finally solve these. Plus 3, so x equals 7, or x equals, what is negative 4 plus 3?
Wait, what? Sorry, I was writing all it down, sorry. Negative 4 plus 3 would be negative 1.
Yeah. Very good. And that's my solution. So if the absolute value is added to something, I just subtract that thing to get rid of it. Let's do another example over here. Some of you are still writing. So over here, what if we had this? 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 equals 20. Times the absolute value of x plus 1 equals 20. Is there anything that's not in the absolute value over here? On this side of the equation? You guys see any numbers not inside the absolute value on this side of the equation? Which one? 2. So before I do anything else, I have to get rid of this 2. When the 2 is just sitting there next to the absolute value, that means 2 times. So the opposite of times is divided by. So I divide both sides by 2. That simply cancels this off, leaving the absolute value of x plus 1 equals 20 over 2, or 10. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Now, do I have the absolute value all alone on this side? The 1 is inside of the absolute value. So before I subtract 1, once I have the absolute value all alone, this is when I say x plus 1 equals 10, or x plus 1 equals negative 10. So do you see the difference between this and this? Here, the plus 7 was outside of the absolute value. That's why I had to subtract it first. Here, the plus 1 is inside, so I actually can't subtract it until I do this. But now I subtract 1 from both sides. X equals 10 minus 1, which is 9. Or subtract 1 from both sides. X equals negative 10 minus 1, which is negative 11. Those are my answers. All right. What if if I had both? What if I had this? 3 times the absolute value of x minus 2 plus 1 equals 10. Whoa, there's a lot of stuff now outside of the absolute value.
You could
What is the first thing that I'm going to get rid of? What would you guess?
subtract 1 because you
Yeah.
can't find 3 by 10.
Right,
but you
I
can
want to
divide by
subtract the 1 first, right? Because if I divide by 3, I have to divide everything by 3. And I don't want this plus 1 to have to get divided by 3. That'll make a fraction. So I'm going to subtract 1 first. Just like if this said 3x plus 1 equals 10. We're kind of solving for x in a way. That leaves me with 3 times the absolute value of x minus 2 equals 10 minus 1, which is 9. Now what can I do?
Divide by 3.
Now I can divide by 3. That cancels off. So I have x minus 2 inside of my absolute value equals 3. What's my next step?
Make it take away the absolute value and just do
Yeah, I have the absolute value all alone. So I take that away and I say x minus 2 equals 3 or x minus 2 equals negative 3. Add 2 to both sides, x equals 5 or x equals negative 1. That's my final answer. Right, I'm just going to write up some equations. We're not going to actually solve these. I just want you to tell me what you would have to do as your first step or first 2 steps.
add 11.
Hold on. I'm going to write up a bunch. Alright, what would be my first step or what would be my first 2 steps here? First 2 steps, Jake.
I have a question.
Okay.
In absolute values, can x ever equal a fraction?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah, a lot of these you would get fractions for answers. But we're not actually going to solve these all the way.
Okay,
Okay, what would be my first 2 steps to solving this one?
add 11.
Add 11, right? So I get rid of that.
And then you
Add 11 to 30.
Right.
So that's 41.
And then what would I do after I did that?
Divide by 7.
Divide by 7, right? Divide by 7. Okay, and we did wind up with some weird wacko number over there. But that's okay. So then we'd have the absolute value of x plus 1 all alone. Okay, what would be my first 1 step here?
Subtract by 12.
Subtract 12 from both sides, right? And that's it. Now I have my absolute value alone. What would be
Add
my
one.
first step here?
can't be solved. It's minus.
Okay.
It's
So-
no solution.
Yeah, this is tricky though. I can't tell until I have the absolute value all alone. Because it is possible for the absolute value of something minus something to equal a negative number. That is possible. So the first step here would be to add 1. Now I have the absolute value, and I can see that negative 10 plus 1 would be negative 9. Now I can say there's no solution. But you can only say that if you show the absolute value alone equals a negative number. Because watch, what if this problem had said this? the absolute value of x plus 1 minus 15 equals negative 10. I don't know if there's a solution to that yet. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. What is negative 10 plus 15?
5.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden I have the absolute value of x plus 1 equals a positive number. So I can solve this one. So in order to tell if there's no solution, I first have to isolate my absolute value. Okay? Alright. What would be my first 2 steps for the next one?
Add 5 to both sides.
Add 5 and then
Divide by 3.
divide by 3. Add 5, divide by 3. Okay, last one. What would be my first 2 steps?
Subtract by 7, divide by 3.
Subtract 7, divide by 3. And sometimes you will have x all alone in the absolute value. We still have to get rid of everything that's not in the absolute value. Alright. Any other questions, guys?
Not really.